Hi there, John Moore here, and I am a shamanic teacher and practitioner, and I live up here in the state of Maine. And today I want to talk about the subject of shamanism and relationships and all kinds of different relationships. It's so I live up here in Maine, and it's early December. We're coming up on the holiday of Yule. I think we're still in the middle of Hanukkah, and Christmas is coming, and all kinds of stuff going on. Lots of stuff. The solstice, which is really what Yule is all about, or the beginning of Yule anyway. And we just had our first really beautiful sticking snow. We've had some snow, but this is the first where we've had a few inches that have stuck, and it's very pretty. And I've just watched the sunset come up and turn all the land pink, and it was just a beautiful thing. And I am always reminded at this time of the year about cycles and relationship. And this is a really important idea in shamanism. First of all, we have the cycles that the earth goes through. And in most shamanic cultures, the ones that aren't really close to the equator, we find 4 seasons or some semblance of the 4 seasons. I draw from pagan Europe, which celebrated the solstices, the equinoxes, and the spaces in between, the 8 traditional Sabbats or holidays or what have you. And it's where we get things like Easter and Halloween and Christmas. And yes, those things were Christianized later on, but they didn't start out that way. And, Yule time, this time of year in December, you may be watching this, who knows, 10 years in the future and in a different month, but really is a celebration of the sun returning, right? Because solstice is the darkest night of the year, or the longest night of the year. If you're in the northern hemisphere, that's in December, and if you're in the southern hemisphere, that's in June. So I'm in the northern hemisphere, so we have that winter solstice, which is the standing sun, is what that means, solstice, and it's the longest night of the year, and then the sun returns. And so Yule is really about the celebration of the sun returning, because our ancestors, we rely on the sun. It provides basically all life on earth. Without the sun, there would be nothing. There would be no life on earth. And so it really is the source of life on earth. And wherever you're from, your ancestors probably at some point had some form of sun worship going on, because they understood that the cycles of the sun were important to growing crops and things warming up, and the changes of seasons were necessary. Understanding and being in relationship to the change of seasons was necessary to the survival of your people, not just you, but your tribe, your culture, your family group, any of those things. So the word relationship is really, really important in shamanism, and I don't know that it always gets enough play from in videos or with different teachers or in books about shamanism. But really, the practice of shamanism is about creating relationship with spirit and living through those relationships and allowing spirit to live through those relationships. When we think about relationships, obviously, as people, we think about interpersonal relationships, we think about romantic relationships with our family. But you also have a relationship to yourself. You have a relationship to spirit, whether you are conscious of it or not. You have a relationship to nature. And all of those things, all of those various relationships are very, very important in shamanism. And shamans are always trying to improve the relationships, strengthen the relationships, rely upon the relationships that they have, both with spirit. And that's what makes shamanism, is the spiritual aspect of this, is that we deal with spirits. Shamans work with helping spirits. We work with power animals and maybe gods and goddesses, if depending on your culture, or um, angels and elves and dwarves and all kinds of spiritual beings that we work with. We work with the deceased. We work with all kinds of things, and we can't do that if we don't have a really good relationship with them. So a lot of shamanic training, a lot of shamanic initiation is really about building those relationships, and that's relationship with spirit. The next thing that makes sort of shamanism is a relationship to nature, and that we recognize that we are not apart from nature, we are a part of nature, right? I know it's a little catchphrase, but we are as much a part of nature as birds and trees and flowers. We just have the ability to do a great deal of destruction in nature through the way that we live, through the way that we don't conserve, through our day-to-day activities. We have a way of causing great destruction to the natural world, which we see. And so most shamanic practitioners that I know are very, very concerned with things like the environment, because we recognize that we are not separate from it. It's not us and the environment. We live in the environment. Yes, we have houses and clothing that help protect us from the elements a little bit, but that only goes so far, right? We all need clean water and clean air and food to live. And if we don't have access to those things, or we're destroying the resources where we get those things, that's not a very good relationship. We don't try, and relationship is about give and take. We understand that to eat, I need to take, right? So if I am a meat eater, I need to take the lives of animals to eat. And I recognize that and appreciate that. If I'm not a meat eater, then I still need to take the lives of plants to eat. And in the shamanic worldview, plants have spirits. And so we understand that. And so we try to give back in ways that we can, by protecting the environment, by supporting animal rights and cruelty-free ways of doing things, or less cruel ways of doing things, and organic farming when we can. When I'm not saying that everybody can afford that or everybody can do that, but most people I know in the shamanic world place a lot of emphasis on this relationship to the environment, to the natural world, to our non-human people friends, which can include trees and birds and animals and flowers and rivers and rocks and nature spirits. So let's talk about interpersonal relationship. And this sometimes is the hard part. Even though we live in interpersonal relationships, we were born into interpersonal relationships, we have been in them in our whole lives, and these can be extremely challenging. Even interpersonal relationships between shamans, between different shamanic practitioners, can be very difficult. I won't, but I could talk about some challenging instances that I've had. But it's also extremely important. Interpersonal relationships. We recognize that as human beings, we are social creatures. We are hardwired to have connection to family, to tribe, to others. There are parts of our brain that actually physical structures in our brain that look to see where we are in our social order and that sort of thing. So these social connections are extremely important. These interpersonal relationships, these love relationships, intimate relationships are important. And I know not a lot of spiritual people tend to stay away from sex and intimacy and all of that stuff, except for very in very limited scope, or to say that sex is bad and evil and nobody should ever do it. But if it weren't for sex, none of us would be here. Or most of us definitely would not be here if it weren't for sex and intimacy. So shamanically, that part of human relationships is actually can be beautiful and wonderful and loving and build intimacy and create deeper connection. And so there's not a dogma to shamanism where we say, that's bad, don't do that, don't do it like that, that sort of thing. There's just, we look at things from a very practical perspective. Shamanism is always meant to be practical. I cannot remember her name, and I apologize if you remember her name. If you know her name, leave it in the comments. But there's a shamanic podcaster who often uses the phrase, "Does it grow corn?" and talking about spirituality for the sake of spirituality. And say that's well and good, but does it grow corn? Does it provide? Does it give healing? Does it do this? Does it do that? Is it practical? So shamanism is a very practical spiritual path. It has to be. It came from our Paleolithic ancestors who almost everything was about survival. And so it is, in a way, survival spirituality. Now, we do have the luxury now, most of us, of not living in a situation where survival is threatened on a day-to-day basis. And so we can explore lots of things spiritually simply for intellectual curiosity, or I don't want to say entertainment, that's making too much light of it, but for personal development, personal growth. It doesn't not have to be strictly tactical growth. Practical, but not necessarily tactical, because spiritual growth, so this is about relationship to self, is also important. It's important that we evolve spiritually. It's important that we evolve as people. And there are different things that evolution means. A lot of people are caught up in this idea of ascension. And I'm not going to, I don't know enough about it to talk about it. I won't say don't know anything about it. I don't know enough about it to talk about it. And maybe it's a thing. But from the outside, it looks a lot like spiritual bypassing, meaning if I just meditate enough, I'm going to ascend and I don't have to deal with this world anymore because I will be above, I will be a new being. And that's wonderful. It's a wonderful idea, but for the vast majority of people in the world, and maybe everybody, that is fantasy. That is spiritual bypassing, meaning I don't want to deal with my life, so I'm going to dive into spirituality. And I understand the allure of that. I understand the appeal of not having to deal with painful situations or that sort of thing. But those things, our wounds are where we grow. Our wounds are where we get stronger. The painful life experiences, the challenges we face in life, are the things that make us grow stronger and grow spiritually and evolve. And being able to take your spiritual practice into the practical, real world, ordinary world, is important, is a beautiful thing, it's a wonderful thing, and it's an important thing. And that's always where shamans have practiced, right? Yes, you would go to, if you lived in a shamanic culture, you would go to the shaman for specific healing, for example, or for specific information, or for a blessing to stay safe during a journey, or during a hunt, or what have you. So that is about relationship to self, and it's about growing your relationship to self through, I almost hate to use the phrase spiritual evolution. I don't really have a better one for it at this point. Spiritual development maybe is a better word. There's, with humans, we have this tendency to see things in levels, in very rigid rank order. This is part of the patriarchal system that has, the one guy on the top, and he has his people under him, and those people under them, and those people under them. And you look at most corporate structures are like that. You have your CEO and your executive vice presidents and your senior vice presidents and your managers, and at the very bottom, the most people that are employees. It's a pyramid thing. And so there are these strict levels, and we love to do that. I studied martial arts for a very long time, decades of my life, and people are very, very concerned with belts and what belt are you, as if that means something. I mean, it means something in context, but if I tell you I'm a black belt, what does that mean to you? Which art did I study? With which teacher? How long did it take me to do that? What are my skills? Can I teach any of those things? So shamanism, on the other hand, is non-hierarchical. It's hard to say that word. Non-hierarchical. There is no pyramid. There's nobody at the top. There's nobody at the bottom. You have practitioners and the people that they help, and they're approached as equals. You have spirits. We approach spirits as equals. And that is a different kind of relationship that many people many people have some difficulty grasping, right? And yes, there are teachers in shamanism. I have a teacher, my teacher has a teacher, etc. And I go to them for wisdom and learning, but it's not a rank thing. It's not a they tell me what to do thing. It's they have some stuff that they've learned that they can share with me. And I tell that to my students as well, the people who study with me. I say that I am a guide, not a guru. You don't come to me and I put my hand on your head and all of a sudden you are enlightened. It doesn't work that way. I lead you through some experiences and you do some work and you learn some things and you evolve and you develop some characteristics that will help you out, that will help you spiritually, that will help you heal, or whatever we're working on, help you work with spirits, help you in that relationship. And so that is the type of relationship that I have with my students. Even though I have something to teach them, because in Japanese the word for teacher is sensei, right? From martial arts I learned that, and it means basically one who has gone before or one who has been born before. And that's sort of the same thing with shamanic teachers. I have, assuming you're coming to me to learn something, I have gone before and learned that, and also learned how to teach it. I have done specialized teacher training and, worked through a lot of stuff to be able to teach the way that I teach. And so I've gone before, but that doesn't mean I'm on level 13 and you bow down to me and I have to sit at a level above you or any of those things. And I'm not putting down those forms of spirituality where that is a thing, where guru worship is a thing. It's just different. I'm just pointing out a contrast. So I always tell people I'm a guide, not a guru. I can lead you to an experience, but if you don't want to have it, you're not going to have it. I can't force you to do anything. And I don't do the Shaktipat thing that gurus do, where I transfer my energy to you that gives you sort of instant enlightenment or whatever. That, in the system and in the way that I teach, that is not, that's not going to help you. You have to go through experiences. You have to be initiated by spirit. I can't initiate you. Spirit initiates you. I can lead you through experiences that might provide an opportunity for you to be initiated. And I can steer you away from things like, I've tried that before and it didn't work. You can try it if you want and let me know how it goes, because if it works for you, maybe it just doesn't work for me. But I can steer you away from situations that might not work as well or might be dangerous, because you should understand that there are dangers in spiritual practice. And shamanism isn't shy about that. A lot of people are. There are people who see everything as light and rainbows and unicorns and clouds and cotton candy. And that's not always the case. We deal with some dark stuff. As human beings, we have shadows. Shamanism has a way of pulling that stuff up and making us confront it. Ultimately, it's a good thing. It's not pleasant at the time, but ultimately it's good because you're healing from that. You're evolving from that. You're recognizing what's hidden deep down inside in your shadow that you're not even aware of. So I've been talking for about 20 minutes. I'm going to wrap this up. I just wanted to touch on the importance of the importance of relationships in shamanism and the idea of relationship, how we interact, how we deal with, how we treat others, not just people, and ourselves, not just others, but think about relationship to yourself. What's your relationship like with yourself? A lot of my clients have really horrible inner dialogue. They say things to themselves that they would never allow anybody else to say to them. And I always ask, if you wouldn't allow your best friend to say that to you, why are you allowing yourself to say that? To think, oh, I'm a horrible person, or I'm awful, or I'm ugly, or I'm whatever. Why would you allow yourself to say that? You wouldn't accept that from anyone else. So think about that, and think about being in relationship with yourself and having a good relationship with yourself. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Wouldn't that be great to have a good relationship with yourself? So with that, I'm going to sign off. Please subscribe to my channel. I have a lot of videos coming. There's a lot already there. I love sharing about shamanism and spirit in general, and my personal experiences, my personal takes on things. I hope this has been helpful. I hope you are happy and healthy and stay that way through this season, and I will talk to you real soon.